Hey everybody, welcome. Today we're going to talk a little bit about Agile transformation, Agile transformation roadmaps. We're going to kind of go through the idea of what is an Agile transformation roadmap, why it's important, how you get your executives to participate and buy in, and how you make sure that you're getting a really solid return on your investment. So I hope you enjoy the next 20 or 30 minutes or so. You could do anything here. Like, what would be the ideal model for what Agile would look like at scale? What would we do if we could just do anything? And you describe it. And a lot of times what they'll say is, oh, that's really great, but I don't see how we would get there, right? And then, so that's where the transformation roadmap comes in, or the system of transformation in our world, right? So we get the system of delivery, we get buy-in that, yeah, man, if we could do this, this is what it should look like. We get agreement on that. And they're like, well, how would we get there in a stepwise, incremental way? And so in Leading Agile world, we came up with the idea of the 4 quadrants, where we have, predictable, adaptable, emergent, convergent. We talk about 4 major states: predictive, emergent, where we're striving for predictability, but things are changing; predictive convergent, which is where a lot of people try to be when they're doing waterfall, where we're predictable and we're able to make and meet commitments. Adaptive convergent is the lower right quadrant for us, and that's basically where we're making and meeting commitments, but we're doing it in much smaller batches. We have an idea of the scope, but we're doing it in much smaller batches, leads to greater experimentation. And then you have the upper right quadrant, which is the adaptive emergent quadrant, which is really, really experimental. And so there's a lot of content that I've put together over the years around how do you map out this transformation journey? Because most organizations, at least the ones that call us, tend to start off with predictive emergent. They're trying to be predictable, but things are changing around them all the time. So the journey that we've outlined is, let's get into the predictive convergent quadrant, using Agile, using Lean, but being more planful, rolling wave planning, progressive elaboration. And then as you start to get the teams in place, you start to stabilize delivery, you start to get things to where you can put them in market faster, you start to figure out how to break dependencies, you start to be able to do team-based funding. You start to be able to, now that we have team-based funding, we can let the teams be a little bit more experimental. So this whole idea of expeditions to base camps. So basically, expeditions to base camps are, you take vertical slices of the organization all the way across the stack: team, product, portfolio, investment, and then you build the organization in a series of vertical slices. Very possible to do, right? And that becomes the underpinning of this system of transformation and what would result in a transformation roadmap. But then you have this idea of system of engagement. You say, okay, cool, Mike. Well, it's like, I agree with you on what it should look like when we're done, and I think your idea for how we're going to get there is really, really smart, but how do I get my leadership to wrap their head around it? And that's where we start to get into things like what we would call like a system of engagement, where we start to talk about strategies for running different workshops, and then define the end states, and then running pilots. We talk about creating playbooks and building Agile transformation offices and building services internally to provide coaches and to provide training and to provide support and all these things. But even enlisting the organization is a stepwise process. So you have the building of the software that's iterative and incremental. You have the transformation that's iterative and incremental. And then you have getting everybody enlisted that is iterative and incremental. And then, once we get past the cognition of, okay, well, how are we going to get everybody enlisted? Now we have to ask ourselves the question of, like, how are we going to stay there when we're done? Like, what does it look like to sustain an Agile enterprise? And my general belief is that if we can get agreement on the system of delivery, system of engagement, system of continuous improvement, then we can start to talk about what a well-orchestrated, well-run transformation looks like. And the history of this for us is, we started off 12 years ago, and we did a lot of things very intuitively at the time. Like, we could just get in, we were running much smaller engagements, but as the engagements started to get bigger and the dollar signs started to get bigger and the level of people in the organization that we were interacting with and the amount of risk that was being introduced, as all that stuff started to scale, and as we grew as a company, peaking last year at about 160 people, as we grew as a company, we had to get more structured and disciplined about how we ran this stuff and how we created safety for our clients. And so, so all these things considered, when we talk about an Agile transformation roadmap, what it does is it gives the organization a really clear plan for what kinds of changes are going to be made, when are they going to be made, how they're going to be made, who's going to make them, what we can expect along the way, what kind of performance characteristics do we think we're going to get. And we have the ability to create a series of cascading hypotheses. It's like, if we do this thing, we take this organization to base camp 1, then we think it's going to be more predictable. And this is what predictability is going to mean in terms of the data. And here's the metrics that you should be able to see as a result of this engagement. And we get to the end of that and we say, okay, did we achieve the goals? Did we get the appropriate return on investment? And if we did, then that ends up cost justifying the remainder of the transformation. And it creates a really powerful virtuous cycle, because the companies that we engage with have a really clear idea of what it is that they're going to build, how they're going to build it, when they're going to build it, or really what they're going to change. And then, and so they can start to have a plan. You can create a forecast for what it's going to cost. And then it gives us a good way of kind of, using our people in a very structured and systematic way and engaging the client in a very structured and systematic way, right? So it's really good for everybody when we can get really, really clear on the approach and actually put together a plan. It's not, 10, 15, 20 consultants on the ground just running around doing Agile stuff. It's like everybody's operating against a very structured, disciplined model or an approach for how to lead change within a large enterprise. So typically there's 3 classes of metrics that we look for in a transformation. And so the first set of metrics is really around the idea of, are we doing what we said we were going to do? So if you think about an Agile transformation roadmap, it's like a project plan. So one of the very early things that we're going to ask ourselves is, whatever the plan is, are we doing what we said we were going to do when we said we were going to do it? Is it on track? Is it burning dollars at the right rate? First indicator, right? Just, are we on plan? The second set of indicators gets into the performance characteristics of the organization itself. Do we have teams formed? Are those teams able to stabilize velocity? Are they able to get the amount of escape defects lower? Are we increasing our throughput? Do we have stable throughput, right? All those kinds of things. And then we look at, performance characteristics of the organization at the team level, at the program level, or the product level, the portfolio level, the investment tier level. So you're instrumenting the performance of the organization. And there's certain things that are, I would consider, like hard metrics, and they typically tend to be metrics around throughput, that are throughput oriented. Are we delivering what we said we were going to deliver, like the product that we said we were going to deliver, not the transformation work itself, but is the product flowing through the system faster? And are the skills and attributes of the people in the system performing better? So there's hard metrics, right? Things that we can say that is like, are we on track with the product? Are we not on track with the product? But then there's softer metrics like that we do through assessment, which is like, can the team decompose a backlog? Can the team effectively collaborate? Is the team running the ceremonies and things like that? Do they understand the ceremonies? Are they getting the results from the ceremonies? So there's a class of metrics that are basically like, is the system performing? That's cool. Then the third, and actually the one you really care about, is the company getting greater business benefit from the transformation? So if we're asking ourselves, we're trying to take Expedition 1 to Base Camp 1, and our hypothesis is that we're going to get predictable. Is the team becoming predictable? Is that predictability leading to us being able to make and meet commitments to our customers in a better way? Is it enabling us to integrate with marketing and sales in a better way? Is it giving us the ability to get more deals closed? If we're moving from an Expedition to Base Camp 2 and we're working on smaller batch size, Then what we're starting to look at is, can we actually put product in front of our clients faster? Can we get feedback from the clients? Is that feedback helping us build things that is actually going to produce value for our clients better? If I'm moving to Basecamp 3 and my hypothesis is I need to break dependencies, is that allowing me to put things into market even faster? Are we able to get even better feedback from our clients, more specific feedback from our clients? And so the holy grail is are we able to provide more value for our clients that they're willing to pay for? Are we building more of the right products? Are we building more features that they want to use? Are we delivering them faster? Are we getting greater ROI? But the plan, like delivering against the plan, is like a leading indicator of the lagging indicator of, are we building a better product? The are we delivering to plan is a leading indicator of, is the performance of the organization getting better? Performance of the organization is a leading indicator of, are we putting better things into market? And that's why it's so essential to do the organization in slices, because if you try to say, okay, well, this transformation is going to take 4, 5, 6 years, and we're not going to start measuring anything until we're done, like that's a lot of investment and a lot of time to kind of hope and pray. And so what you do is you take a slice of the organization, you create a transformation plan for that slice. Now, transformation plan would be a subset of the broader transformation roadmap. But you take that plan and you say, okay, we're going to execute these things to get this slice of the organization to Basecamp 1. Are we delivering against plan? And then we say, okay, now that we're delivering against plan, are the performance characteristics of the organization improving in the way that we want them to improve? Okay, cool. That's a great leading indicator. Then if the performance of the organization is improving the way we think that it should improve, then we can say, are we getting better business results as a result of that? And again, if the dollars that are being spent on consulting, whether it be, with an external consultant or internal consultants or, employees, however you guys want to look at it, it's like there's an investment that's being made. There's a commitment that's being made. There's risk that's being taken. And are we operating against the plan? Are we seeing the performance improvements? And are we getting the business results? And if we can tie all three of those together, that's when everybody wins, right? And that's when it becomes a great engagement for us. It becomes a great engagement for our clients. And everybody feels good about the money, the dollars that are being spent to do the transformation work. How do you get your leadership engaged? How do you get them engaged in not only building the transformation roadmap, but ultimately running the transformation roadmap, and then leveraging the newly transformed organization to get better business results? It always starts with the idea that we have to anchor the transformation into the things that the executives care about. It's always a fascinating thing, because do the executives care about the morale of the team? Yeah, for sure, 100%, right? Do they care that people feel engaged and happy at work? 100%. Do they want people to be more collaborative? 100%. Do they want their employees to take greater ownership of things? Yes, 100%. But the reason why they want those things is because they believe that those things are going to get them better business results. And so what we found is that if we can get leadership connected to the promised business results of a transformation, then we have a better shot at actually getting those leaders engaged, right? So they know that if their participation in this is going to generate a 3x return on investment, or it's going to increase the amount of software that can be capitalized, or we're going to be able to get our organization operating in a leaner way. We're going to be able to get the right software in front of the clients, right? All those things. Then you're more likely going to get their attention. But like anything, it's an enlistment process. So yes, you have to connect the value, but you also have to help them see why their ability to steward the transformation is so critical. Chris Beal, one of our advisor level, executive level consultants, is famous for saying that we can't do it to you, we can't do it for you, we have to do it with you. And what our job is to support our clients on their transformation journey and to help them build the capabilities to ultimately run this newly transformed organization after the engagement's over. And so a lot of the same things that we talked about around metrics and performance and things like that are very similar things that we have to do here. We have to get the executives enlisted into the idea that transformation isn't just about training people on how to do Scrum or training people on how to do SAFe. They have to recognize, they have to see that it is a different way. We're moving from a cost accounting to a throughput-based accounting model. We're moving from functional silos into team-based organizational design. We're going to reduce 12 to 18-month planning cycles, and we're going to try to move to like 3-month planning cycles. There's lots of things that have to change, and so they have to be able to see the change. They have to be able to see the things that they're supporting, and that's a lot for those guys. And there's a lot of stuff going on there. And so the problem they're trying to solve, the economics that they're trying to get as a result of this transformation, it has to be a big enough deal. And then they have to see very, very clearly the nature of the changes that they're making and why. And then, they have to participate in the transformation roadmap in terms of, understanding which parts of the organization need to go early, which ones are going to provide the highest value, earliest return on investment. They need to participate in the executive steering committees, sometimes in the transformation leadership teams. They need to see this as their transformation. If they delegate it, they need to delegate it into people that are empowered to make decisions and to lead the change. And there are strategies for doing this, right? So that's what we talk about in our system of engagement, how we do initial workshops, how we run define the end states. It actually starts from how we market as a company, how we sell, how we do workshops and whiteboard sessions before we even get a deal set up, how we try to elevate to those leaders early in the process so that they feel invested and committed to what it is we're doing. And then there's no surprises. They get on the ground. They participate in an initial workshop, and then they get invited to participate into an executive steering committee while the organization's doing the define the end state and creating the roadmap that comes out of that. And then they meet and are engaged on regular cadences. And because they're getting metrics reviewed with them and they can see the leading and lagging indicators, it builds confidence. The teams are bringing to those executives, here are the things that we need your support for, so they can be active participants in it. They're just not getting status reports. And so it's just, again, virtuous cycle is what keeps coming to mind. It's like, if you set this stuff up, then you can get the leaders to participate. A lot of times what people ask me is, well, how do I get my leaders involved? And if it's outside of the context of how we do it, the shortest answer I can give anybody is just connect it to something that they care about and that they want to participate in. I mean, that's the short answer. But for us as an outside company, most of the time with these folks, is that we have a structured process of enlistment. And there's stuff that you've got to do to get people bought in. I don't know. It's just like there's a process to it, and it's built into the DNA of how we work. And the only easy answer is connected to value, but it needs to be value that they really, really care about. And if you're going to connect it to value they care about, then you've got to let them know, it's like, what specifically do you want them to do differently? That's another interesting thing, because if you just say, okay, well, we want executive support, and then they say, okay, well, they're not clear on what they're supporting. You say, okay, cool, we want you to do Agile. We believe in all these benefits. We're enlisted. We'll give you money for training or coaches or what have you. But then we find out that it's really an encapsulation and orchestration problem. It's dependencies. And they say, well, we didn't sign up for having to break dependencies, right? And so they spent the money, they provided the support, because they weren't told about the ultimate need to break dependencies between teams. Teams can't do it without their support. It requires additional dollars, right? All those kinds of things. So it's like they feel like, well, the team wasn't clear with me. And so a lot of it is like we don't know everything before we walk into an engagement, but I can absolutely tell leaders, 80-90% of the kinds of challenges that they're going to have because they're just super consistent organization to organization. And the big thing is, and we say this to people all the time, it's like I want those leaders to know the things that they're going to encounter before we start. Because if they're not going to change those things, they're not willing to lead those kinds of organizational initiatives, then there's no way that this is going to work. And it's like, and at that point, it's in nobody's best interest to get started on something that's not going to work.